Hi everyone, this is Heather Lottinen from the Flourish.Academy. This is episode 527. We are revisiting the Mac Catalina situation. Today is February 7th, and Catalina was released by Apple on October 7th, which means it's been 4 months exactly since that release. And listen, if I were to sum it up, I hate it. I installed it on my MacBook Pro. I have not yet installed it on my main working machine, which is my iMac, because my MacBook Pro is my development machine, meaning I install all new software on there first so that I can test it. I don't rely on that machine. I do teach from it when I'm on the road, but it's not necessary for client work. So if there's an issue, it doesn't really slow me down. It's just super annoying. And that's exactly where we're at. I updated Catalina on my MacBook Pro about maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it has been awful. It has been crazy slow all the way around. Lightroom and Photoshop to me are almost unusable. Everything is updated, so it's not that I need to update Lightroom or Photoshop. I have 16 gig of RAM in that machine, so it's not a lack of random access memory. I'm not sure what's going on, except that there is no way I am going to install that on my iMac as long as I'm experiencing this level of slowness. I don't mean it's like, oh, it's a little bit slow, there's a lag. I mean unusable slow, especially if I try to run any type of filter or action inside of Photoshop. Oh, which also reminds me, all of my droplets need to be recreated. So if you're not familiar, droplets are essentially actions on steroids. You can take an action, you can automate it into a droplet, and you can do something, say, on an entire folder of images. So there are 2 droplets that I use fairly often. One is my black and white droplet, and I use my Photoshop black and white because I still like it a little bit better than my Lightroom black and white. Lightroom is fine, it looks good, but I just prefer the conversion better because of the way I do it in Photoshop. I actually separate out the channels, the color channels from the luminosity channels, and I just eliminate color, and that keeps a richer black and white where I do not have that capability in Lightroom. So I have this black and white action that I love in Photoshop. I saved it as a droplet, so it's just File, Automate, Droplet. I create this droplet, and I duplicate an entire set of images, and I throw that folder on the droplet. So I can turn 700 images black and white very quickly. I don't time it because I typically walk away from my machine when I'm doing something of that nature. I also have an action turned into a droplet that I use to compress the file size, and I like that one as well. Well, oftentimes when you update an operating system, so this is not new to Catalina per se, but the last couple of operating system upgrades, I have not needed to recreate my droplets. But with Catalina, I do. And the reason is droplets are absolutely operating system dependent. So they run or look a little bit different in Windows than they do Mac. And again, it depends on your operating system. So, okay, that's not a huge deal. You just really go to File, Automate, New Droplet. It's fine, I guess. It's just a little bit annoying. Any of the filters that transform, like Gaussian blur or warping or liquefying, are just so painfully slow. Also, there are some scripts that just don't work inside of Photoshop. You might not use these scripts, but some people do. I've checked Apple's website. Of course, they don't say anything about this. Adobe does. They have a list on their website of Catalina known issues, and they update it periodically because you'll notice that Adobe has been releasing a ton of Photoshop updates. Oh gosh, I should have looked before I got on here. 21 dot something is the latest version, and I update it on my MacBook Pro constantly, hoping that at some point we'll figure out this situation. And when I say we, I mean Adobe and Apple will figure out this situation and make it run better. So I thought to myself, listen, this could be just my issue. That's entirely possible because, machines are all configured a little bit differently. So I went to the FA community group and I posted yesterday and asked anyone if they had updated and what their experience has been. And what I noticed was probably 90% of the people that responded are having issues, and it's really, really slow, or something doesn't work right. I know one of my friends was having a strange export issue in Lightroom. It was just acting really funny with the presets, the export presets that we had created. Another friend said he had installed it on his development machine. There's no way he's putting it on his main working machine. And then there was one person who has had no issues at all. And I've heard of these, I feel like they're like urban legends, myths, these people that have no issues with Catalina. Congratulations. If that's you, you are a very rare exception. Most people are having some type of trouble with Catalina. I would think that at 4 months into this upgrade, they typically have a lot of these issues worked out. I mean, this has happened in the past, strange things, but they usually have them worked out pretty quickly. This is the longest stretch of time I've ever seen in my career with Apple and Adobe where there have been this many serious issues for this long. I don't know where they're at with this. I would love to be, I would just love to listen in on one of their team meetings and see who's blaming who or who's doing what to solve the problem. Because here's the deal. At some point, we are all going to be forced to go to Catalina, right? At some point, there are going to be other applications that just don't work with older versions of an OS. Now, that's typically way down the road, but it does happen. And my only hope is that by that point, they have this all figured out. Could you please leave me a comment and let me know, are you running Catalina? How is it working for you? And also, what does your system look like? So again, I have 16 gig of RAM, that's random access memory, on my MacBook Pro, which should be plenty. I have 32 gig of RAM on my iMac, which is way more than enough. Remember, random access memory is how fast applications can run on your machine. It has nothing to do with hard drive space or how many terabytes you have, because sometimes I'll ask people, when they tell me their machine is running slow, I'll ask them how much RAM they have, and they'll tell me 4 terabytes. And I'll say, wow, really? Okay, because that's not a thing. You're talking about your hard drive space, not your memory. Notoriously, Photoshop and Lightroom, most Adobe products, notoriously have been known for being memory hogs. That is random access memory heavy. They use a lot of it. And in fact, I noticed with the latest update of Photoshop and Lightroom, okay, back up. I have kept Lightroom and Photoshop updated on my iMac, but I'm still running Mojave, so I don't have Catalina on there. And I have noticed that when I am trying to run Photoshop and Lightroom at the same time, it can be really slow and Photoshop can get hung up. I never had that issue before, so that's a little strange. Also, my MacBook Pro randomly reboots itself at least once per day. It has never done that, ever. I've never had an issue with that machine. And the only thing that has changed is I upgraded to Catalina, and of course, Lightroom and Photoshop are updated. Now, my husband, who is director of IT at a local college, said to me, well, we can downgrade, because I did do a time machine backup. He did a full backup so that he could restore to the latest version of the OS on my laptop. And I said, you know, I'm tempted, but not everybody can do that. And ultimately, I have to keep testing this anyway. So I'm just going to leave Catalina on my laptop. I check for the updates. Anytime there's an update on Catalina, just the dot update, I run it. I run the Photoshop, Adobe, all of those updates constantly on my MacBook Pro just to see if anything changes. Caitlin, you don't, I wouldn't update to Catalina until they get this worked out. I give you the all clear, or you're forced to. That being forced to update, I think, is way, way down the road. Roxy says, I updated my MacBook Pro, had a few issues for starts, but now I'm used to it. Haven't updated my iMac. Is it running? Oh yeah, she said they are running slower. I just think that in the year 2020, I should not have to wait for my computer to catch up with my human brain. If I am doing something in Lightroom or Photoshop, I honestly expect it to happen almost instantaneously. Maybe that's lofty thinking on my part, but again, it is, for me, on my laptop, Lightroom and Photoshop are unusable because they are that slow. So I'm not going to upgrade my iMac. I hope to come back with an update soon that says everything is great, we're in the clear, but 4 months in, and I hate it. That's just one person's opinion. I hope it's going better for you. I hope that you found this useful. I'll see you in the next video.